Okay, on this next part, we are doing steering and axle, which is going to contain tires, rims, lug nuts. Talk about our suspension system and our braking system. This one's a little extensive. So let's start with our tires because it's first on the list. These are our steering tires. These tires are properly mounted and secure. They're nice and even. They should be evenly worn. The correct tread depth is 4/32 for the front, 2 for the back. We would check our tread depth with the tread depth gauge. Easy for me to say. Okay, these tires cannot be recapped. They cannot be mismatched. The inner and outer walls of the tires you're going to inspect for bubbles, cuts, and abrasions. No damage to the inner and outer walls of this tire. It's also properly beaded to the rim. So now we're going to discuss our rim. Our rim shouldn't have any illegal weld repairs, shouldn't have any cracks in our rim. It should not be bent. Okay? No holes, only the factory holes. It's properly mounted and secure with our lug nuts. None of our lug nuts are missing. There's no rust trails or shiny spots. If we saw that, it would indicate that we have a loose lug nut. If you see anything shiny around here, it's loose. Okay, so now we're going to move on to my valve stem here. My valve stem is straight. The cap is in place. Okay, it is not leaking. If I needed to check the tire pressure, I would use a tire pressure gauge. The correct inflation for this tire is 115 psi. Here we have our hub seal. I know that's not on the list, but I just threw it in there. It's probably not secure. It's not leaking because it's filled with fluid. And it's connected to the axle, which the axle goes straight across, and the axle is not damaged, leaking, and it's nice and straight. Okay. Now we're going to go to our leaf springs. These are our leaf springs right here. They're like a big smile, okay? The hanger mounts are properly mounted and secure to the frame of my bus. The front and back one here. The leaf springs are properly mounted and secure to those hanger mounts, not missing any nuts and bolts. They're also properly mounted and secure to my axle with 2 big U-bolts over here. The bolts are not missing, they're not damaged. The leaf springs themselves are not shifted, which means they would not be in line, that they would be off. They're not damaged or missing. They're also properly mounted and secured to the axle. Again, I mentioned the axle, it goes straight across. So now we're going to talk about our shock absorber, which is also properly mounted and secured to the frame of my bus as well as to my axle. Okay. It's not missing any nuts and bolts. It's not damaged or leaking. Okay, so now we're done with our suspension. So let's move to our brakes. Keep it going, keep it going. Okay, my brake lines. We're going to talk about my hydraulic brake lines and my ABS line. My ABS line is a wire sensor. There's no cuts or exposed wiring or illegal tape hiding that exposed wiring. It's properly mounted and secured to my brake rotor. Also, we're going to talk about my hose. My hose has no cuts, bubbles, or abrasions. It's not leaking. That's connected to my brake caliper, so there's no leaking between any of those. We're going to talk now about our contaminants that we could have on our brake rotor and pads. Okay, we should have no oil, we should have no grease. If you looked in here, you could see the brake rotor. There's no oil, there's no grease, there's no metal shavings. Those are the contaminants we're looking for on the brake rotor. And if you look at the rotor, you can see that rotor is nice and smooth. And if you want, you could also throw that your brake pads should have no less than 1/4 inch thickness. So now we're done with that section.